I never felt alone, 3 disturbing true stories of being watched. I never should have opened that door. The moment my fingers gripped the cold handle, dread curled in my stomach like a snake. I had been alone in the house, enjoying the sweet silence, when an odd sound interrupted my peaceful routine. A faint whisper, like someone calling my name, floated through the air. It chilled me. I was home, just another evening on the couch, scrolling through my phone. The soft glow of the screen illuminated the familiar clutter of my living room. Shadows flickered along the walls, cast by the street lamp outside. Everything felt normal, until it didn't. The whisper came again, more urgent this time. "Help me." The air turned icy. I glanced around, heart pounding. I stepped toward the door that led to the attic, a place I had avoided ever since moving in. It stood slightly ajar, creaking with a life of its own, as if something waited inside, eager to breach the threshold. A smell something rotten slithered out, clawing at my senses. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back. But curiosity outweighed my fear. Slowly, I pushed the door open wider, my breath hitching. Darkness enveloped the attic. My voice wavered as I called out, "Is anyone there?" Silence. Then, a soft rustle echoed above me. Not just the wind, the sound of something shifting. I squinted into the dark, straining to see what lurked. My stomach churned. The shadows danced, teasing my imagination, revealing nothing concrete. Suddenly, a thump came from above, hard and urgent. Panic shot through me, and my heart raced. The lights flickered, casting strange silhouettes across the walls. I stumbled back, my throat dry, the chill creeping deeper into my bones. Then a low, muffled voice broke the silence, almost unintelligible yet eerily familiar. "I've been waiting for you." My pulse quickened, pounding in my ears. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside that pitch-black space. I pressed my hands against the door, clawing at the frame, trying to break free. And just then, a figure stepped into the faint light cast by an old, swinging bulb. I froze, dread pooling in my gut. It was not just a shadow, but something grotesque, something that shouldn't exist. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. All I could do was stare into the abyss as it advanced. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. It lunged toward me, its form distorting the very air around it as it shifted and blurred like a mirage. I stepped back instinctively, heart hammering against my ribs, a deer caught in the savage glow of headlights. The creature loomed larger, its features unrecognizable but filled with impossible malice, its eyes seeping a darkness deeper than the void that surrounded us. "Please," it rasped, its voice a grotesque mimicry of my own. "You must listen." The floor creaked beneath its weight, no, beneath the weight of our moment suspended in dread. It felt as if time had folded in on itself, the walls closing in, stifling every anguished breath I dared to take. My mind raced for escape, but every thought dissolved, leaving only the frantic cadence of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, the words barely escaping my lips. It grinned, fangs glinting in the dim light, an unsettling contrast to the subtle contours of my own face that it twisted in mockery. "I've been here all along, waiting, watching," it burbled, the grotesque distortion lacing its voice more like a mocking echo than any genuine sound. My memories of the house cascaded through my mind, a cloister of whispers, the fleeting shadows, every time I felt the prickle of unseen eyes. "What do you want?" "To be free." The answer spilled from its lips like venom, thick and palpable. To take what is rightfully mine. Without warning, the air shifted. I felt a rush, like cold fury ripping through my veins. The door, now completely shut, seemed to vibrate with an energy of its own, echoes of sinister laughter thrumming within the wood. Suddenly, other voices joined in a cacophony of whispers that racked my nerves. It was as if the walls themselves were alive, sown with the tales of the trapped and the damned, and then I heard it faint but undeniable, the sound of feet dragging across the floor above me. Someone else was in the house. Fear gripped me as the creature inched closer, its breath hot and rancid. "You brought it here," it hissed, eyes narrowing into sinister slits. "And now you will pay." I whirled around, desperate, my fingers fumbling toward the door that held my escape. But something on the other side made me hesitate. The dragging grew louder, the whispers crescendoed into a frenzy. I could faintly make out a voice, soft and sorrowful. "Help me please." An urgency surged through me, battling with the suffocating dread. I had to open the door. I had to confront whatever stood behind it, the unknown in the dark above that stroked at the edges of my sanity. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve as I laid my hand on the doorknob. But just as I twisted, the creature lunged forward with a speed that defied logic, grasping my arm with fingers that felt like ice. "You cannot leave. You belong to me now." A sudden bright light flared from above, illuminating the attic in a blinding blaze. I squinted, still caught in the creature's icy grip, but glimpsed movement just beyond. Someone stood at the edge of the attic, a familiar silhouette. "Stop." The voice rang clear, a haunting melody of authority and despair. And before I could comprehend the scene unfolding before me, everything shattered. The walls trembled violently, the light flickered, and then darkness swallowed me whole as I felt myself pulled into an abyss I couldn't escape. There, suspended in nothingness, I felt 1,000 icy hands grip my skin, pulling me deeper into fear, a ceaseless maw that tugged at my heart. And just before the weight of shadows crushed my vision, a single thought spiraled in my mind: I was not alone after all, and whatever had been waiting for me was ready to unleash hell. And then, silence. A cold wind swept over my skin, awakening me from the suffocating clutches of darkness. I gasped into the stale air, each breath clinging to the icy tendrils wrapping around me. Where was I? The ground felt slick beneath me, and for a moment, despair clawed up from my stomach as I turned to find myself back in the attic, but something was ominously off. The once familiar room was now twisted, contorted shadows danced along the walls in shapes that bore no resemblance to what I once knew. Fear encased my heart again, the presence of something otherworldly palpable in the very air I breathed. I staggered to my feet, every nerve ending screaming for me to run, to flee, but the whispering shadows gripped me, ensnaring me in their cold embrace. An echo of laughter circled around me. I spun in place, desperately seeking the source, but it felt like the sound was entwined in the very fabric of the room. "Help me!" the voice from before slithered through the air again, sending shivers down my spine. It resonated closer now, no longer just a memory or a beggar's plea. It clawed at my insides, insistent, every wail a knife cutting through the thick atmosphere. Before I could respond, the whispers escalated around me into frantic tones, a chorus of fear and sorrow. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on something solid. I turned, and my heart plummeted, an icy grip tightening around it. A child's toy lay before me, a hardy little red train, the one I remembered from my childhood, the one my mother tossed out the day my brother vanished. No, I thought, it couldn't be here. It should be gone forever, lost just like he was. I reached down, trembling, my fingers brushing against the dusty surface, and in doing so, awakened a flood of memories. I saw my brother laughing, that infectious joy splashing over me like the sun. But the recollection turned dark and murky, replaced by the shadow of that fateful day when he disappeared, the day the laughter ceased. All at once, the atmosphere shifted, the very air surged with sorrow that enveloped me, pulling me down into the abyss of my memories. The room began to spin, and amidst the chaos umbras formed around me, spectral figures dulled in despair, faces twisted in torment. They reached for me, fingers outstretched, mouths silently pleading. The words I couldn't hear echoed in my heart, a piercing hunger for release. Their eyes were hollow, filled with an emptiness I recognized too well. It was the same look I saw in the creature that had cornered me. I screamed then, the noise raw and desperate, "What do you want from me?" But the words getting lost amongst the wails churned in the air. They surged towards me, those lost souls yearning to escape their confinement, and I could feel my pulse quickening, adrenaline pulsing through my veins, alive with incoherent horror. As the figures closed in, the walls seemed to warp, breathless whispers including my name now echoed into the abyss, merging with the cacophony. I felt myself cracking, a fissure forming in my sanity as I staggered back. I needed an exit, but the shadows twisted and turned, becoming a familiar darkness, and panic tightened its grip around my throat. Suddenly, through the pressing tide of despair, a single voice emerged, the same pleading voice, now clearer, more defined. "Help me." It was my brother's voice, strained and filled with an anguish I had never fully processed. "Help me, please." The realization crashed over me like waves in a storm. He was here, somewhere within this twisted realm, caught in the same web that ensnared these lost souls. "Where are you?" I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. "Follow my voice," he urged, laced with urgency and terror. But as I moved to advance, the shadowy figures closed in tighter, hissing and scratching at my thoughts with their ethereal fingers. I was trapped, swept into a whirlpool of darkness with no way out. "Find me," the voice echoed, now merging with the chilling laughter that surrounded me, suffocating and enraged. Everything shook violently, walls rumbled, lights flickered ominously, and in that moment, I realized the entity that had brought me here hungered for something more. And then the shadows parted, revealing a long, dark corridor leading into the soul of the house. It was both welcoming and terrifying, illuminating possibilities I dared not imagine. Behind me, the cacophony persisted unheard, unyielding, while ahead lay the chance for a truth I had buried for too long. With one last glance at the oppressive figures, I took a step forward, my heart pounding as dread danced at my heels. The air thickened, and a voice behind me screamed, "No! Don't go!" But I couldn't turn back. I had to find him. I leaned into the darkness, moving forward, only to hear the familiar laughter again, this time deeper, more sinister, echoing from the depths. And when I stepped into the corridor, the door behind me slammed shut, locking away all cries of warning, leaving me swallowed whole by the relentless call of my brother and the hell that sang to me in the shadows. It was then that I felt it, a hand clasping my shoulder, the icy grip tightening like a vice. "Welcome home," it hissed, its breath revitalizing the fear coiling within me. As I screamed, everything around me began to dissolve, and I knew it wasn't just the house that was alive, it was us who had become its prey, and we would never escape. The corridor stretched beneath my feet like an endless chasm, its floorboards creaking under the weight of time, each step amplified by the suffocating silence that enveloped me. I felt the icy grip still clinging to my shoulder, not just a reminder of that lurking presence but a beacon in the pitch darkness that loomed ahead. My heart raced, a frantic rhythm that mismatched the heavy stillness in the air. "Help me, please." My brother's voice beckoned again. Its desperate tone guided me further into the corridor, every word echoing off dampened walls that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. With each step, shadows flickered along the edges of my vision, undulating like trapped phantoms caught in a web of longing. They seemed to whisper my name, a soft lullaby steeped in anguish, mingling with my brother's call, as if they sought to ensnare me and draw me closer to their eternal plight. "Where are you?" I shouted, the sound of my own voice both grounding and terrifying in the vast emptiness. But the silence that followed was rejection, an unyielding blackness swallowing the question whole, and for a moment, the corridor felt like it might rupture, revealing a reality far darker than any I could fathom. Then, suddenly, the walls began to pulse, as if the house had a heartbeat, a rhythm built upon unforgotten memories. I reached out, my fingertips grazing the surface, and an explosion of images flooded my mind. My brother playing in the garden, the laughter of childhood echoing through warm summer days, but those memories were rapidly disrupted by flashes of his disappearance, the frantic search that followed, the hopelessness that eventually sunk in, leaving a void so profound that I had spent years trying to escape it. "Come to me," he urged, and the note of urgency in his voice thickened the air, transforming it into a palpable substance, pressing against my chest. "You must hurry." Ignoring the bitter taste of dread rising in my throat, I pressed on, summoned by the desperate pleas woven into the fabric of the dark hallway. My pulse thrummed heavily, intermingling with the memories, creating a symphony of terror and nostalgia I couldn't escape. As I advanced, the air grew colder, the shadows more aggressive, and the shimmering edges of reality began to blur. Suddenly, the corridor branched into three, each path cloaked in deeper darkness than the last. I hesitated, anxiety crashing over me like icy waves. Which way? I called into the abyss, hoping to hear my brother's voice guiding me, but only silence answered a consuming void that made my skin prickle. Then, from the far right corridor, I heard something, a soft rustling, then a quickening whisper, "Help me." "I can't." It was unmistakably my brother, but the voice fragmented mid-sentence, cutting through the atmosphere like a knife and echoing back as a gurgle, a sound lost within despair. That I instinctively dashed toward the right passage, trusting my instinct, my heart pounding harder with each footfall. The shadows writhed angrily, clawing at my ankles as I moved, trying to pull me back into their realm. I shuddered, feeling countless unseen eyes watching, lurking within the walls, waiting for my resolve to falter. As I plunged deeper into the passage, the temperature dropped further and the walls shimmered with a grotesque luminescence, revealing faces twisted in agony, mouths silently screaming out words I couldn't decipher. My breath hitched. They looked familiar, a family of haunted souls bound to this cursed place. They strained towards me, black tendrils stretching as if to drag me into their torment. "Don't leave me," I whispered in horror, but my resolve remained. My brother needed me. The panic-mounted walls closed in as I sprinted forward, and then I stumbled, colliding with a figure emerging from the gloaming. It was a girl, no older than 12, her hair black as coal, her face streaked with tears that glimmered like liquid night. "You shouldn't be here," she gasped, eyes wide with fear, her bony fingers grasping my arm tightly. "He's not what you think." "He's not." But her words were abruptly swallowed as another gust of wind roared through the corridor, knocking me back against the wall, and she vanished, swallowed by the shadows. "Help!" I called, now stricken with both terror and confusion. I could feel my brother's presence ripple through the air, yet this girl's warning echoed in my mind, pushing back against the urge to seek him out. With my heart roiling, I looked back at the narrowing path, but the passage behind me had vanished as if the house had consumed it, leaving no trace of that eerie child, her warning still echoing in the back of my mind. And just then, laughter erupted. The echoes of it resonated through the corridor in broken pulses that made my skin crawl. "Follow, follow," came a voice, twisted and warped, yet disturbingly familiar. It merged with the laughter, pooling darkness that enveloped me. An inexplicable sense of dread washed over me, suffocating and thick as the shadows converged, shattering the silence with a cacophony of despair. I felt something cold breeze across the back of my neck, and the pressure of unseen hands began to press against my spine, pushing, urging me toward the end of the corridor, where looming shapes danced in the gloom. I took a step back, heart racing, but my feet seemed glued to the ground, no longer my own. I couldn't turn away, I couldn't help but tread closer to the laughter that echoed across the wall, the unyielding urge pressing me forward. Suddenly, a door appeared at the end, its wood warped and slathered in shadows, beckoning me in a way that felt too intimate, too knowing. My brother's laughter swirled around me, mixing with the shadows as I stood frozen in shock, hearing his plea for help morph into a taunting symphony that mingled in darkness. "Will you come in?" they whispered in a chilling unison, inviting me to step into the unknown, a threshold fraught with peril and revelation. "Just step inside," they implored. But as I faced that door, testifying to things I feared yet longed to discover, both the laughter and my brother's urgent plea surged through me, intertwining with dread. I knew, deep within my bones, that crossing that threshold could seal my fate or open a door to torment yet unseen. With shaking hands reaching forward, I twisted the doorknob, feeling the cold steel bite against my palm. The door groaned open, revealing a suffocating darkness just beyond. Yet now, my brother's voice echoed again, filled with so much conviction, "I'm here. Please help me." And as I stepped into the abyss, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing off any hope of retreat, and I was left to confront the true face of the darkness dwelling within, and it would not let me go. A shroud of silence descended as the door slammed, absorbing the shock of the sound into the very fabric of the darkness, leaving nothing but an unsettling void. My heart pounded, the echo of my brother's voice tugging at something deep within me, a connection both ethereal and tenuous, like a thread stretched too thin. I stood engulfed by a darkness so deep it felt alive, swirling around me in breaths that seemed to whisper secrets older than time itself. I took a tentative step forward, expecting the chill of the floor beneath me, but instead, I felt a yielding surface underfoot, like stepping onto a thick carpet of swirling mist. The air was heavy with the pulse of unseen entities, enveloping me in an embrace that filled my lungs with dread. "Please, come to me," came the voice, clearer now, but laced with a haunting echo that sent shivers cascading down my spine. I followed the direction of the sound, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was shifting, bending to obscure what lay ahead. Each step plunged me deeper into the unknown. The spirits of those long forgotten weaved through the stillness, their breathless murmurs resounding as a dissonant lullaby. Images flickered like dying embers in a fire, my brother battling shadows just beyond my reach, and then a swift flash of a familiar face, twisted in agony. The realization crashed over me like a wave. It wasn't just my brother who lingered here, it was others too. Their faces were eerily familiar at times, flickering in and out of sight, as if the darkness was willing to unveil them, only to succumb once more into the void. I quickened my pace, determined to find him, but with each stride, the chill deepened, the oppressive atmosphere weighing down on me as if the house itself hungered for my terror. Dark figures flickered in and out of the peripheral, the faintest silhouettes of children, trapped in eternal games, their laughter morphing into piercing shrieks that scratched against my sanity. Reaching a small clearing, I stopped, swallowing the acidic bile that crept up my throat. Splotches of dim luminescence revealed what looked like an altar, adorned with remnants of lives once lived, a broken doll, a rusted locket, and beneath it all, a collection of photographs piled carelessly, faces obscured by dark grime. My hands shook as I sifted through the images, recognizing not just the unlabeled children but the lingering gazes of my family, twisted into smiles that felt laced with despair. Suddenly, a rasping voice slithered from the shadows. "They made a choice, and now they are mine." It dripped venom, wrapping around my heart, tightening achingly as I froze, recognizing the tone. It felt like a forgotten memory. "Who?" I choked, desperation pouring from my lips, but the shadows only danced around me, contorting in shapes that drew nearer, edges curling like smoke. "I am the keeper of lost things," the voice hissed, a sinister delight punctuating its words. "You seek your brother, but you will find so much more, pain." Before I could pull away, the ground swelled with shadows and began to pulse as if alive. Tendrils reached for me, brushing against my skin with a sickening cold, pulling me toward the altar. The photos burst into flames, illuminating the darkness with their mocking light, revealing the faces of those trapped in desperation. Each one cried out in silent screams as their forms began to dissolve into ash. "No!" I yelled, scrambling backward but finding none of the natural resistance of the world outside. The shadows coiled tighter, weaving around my legs, creeping up my torso, consuming my resolve. Let them go. But in the heart of that darkness, the laughter morphed into something monstrous, a symphony of sorrow tinged with madness. "They chose to stay, just like you will." As their torment echoed in my mind, tendrils carried forth words of an ancient promise. The room transformed, walls closing in, obscuring me from any chance of fleeing. Panic ripped through me, the overwhelming weight of loss and despair pressing down until I felt the very edges of my sanity erode. I turned frantically between the shadowy forms materializing, all urging me closer to some unknown fate. "Help! I can't breathe!" I gasped, reaching desperately into the void, clawing for any glimmer of hope or light, but only shadows answered, thick, suffocating, with cold laughter echoing around me. It felt as if time distorted, stretching endlessly as I was drawn deeper into the tumult of my own fears. And then, through the oppressive noise of laughter and cries, through the chaos that threatened to engulf me whole, a voice climbed above the sorrow, a voice I recognized, clear and resolute: "You have to find me. You can't give up." It sliced through the shadows like a blade, igniting the flickering flame of hope within me. "Brothers stick together, remember?" But just as I surrendered to the promise of that voice, a shape surged forth from the darkness, casting a shadow far greater than I could ever imagine, a silhouette of something ancient and wickedly powerful. It loomed behind me, arms outstretched, ready to embrace me in eternal despair. With a final scream, the darkness surged forth, ensnaring me completely in an abyss of lost promises and whispered horrors that threatened to swallow not just me, but everything I held dear. Before I could reconcile what lay ahead, everything went black as a force roared across the altar, exclaiming my surrender. In that heart-stopping moment, where hope flickered perilously close to extinguishment, the world dropped away, leaving only the echo of my brother's voice piercing through the pitch, illuminating the truth waiting to be unveiled in the shadows. And as the last remnant of light flickered, I realized the real horror was not what I sought but what remained unseen, lurking just out of reach, and it awaited my choice. I blinked, expecting to be enveloped in an absolute void, but I opened my eyes to a stark contrast: a tattered room steeped in a sepulchral glow, the air still thick with the ghost of despair. The altar lay empty, the remnants of the photographs now nothing but ash caught in the faint draft, swirling into the corners of the room like lost souls seeking refuge. Confusion gripped me, a sharp, frigid hand squeezing my heart as I scrambled to my feet. Where had the darkness gone? The abrupt transition was jarring, as though reality had been stitched together with shimmering threads of false hope. The shadows still lingered, whispering secrets I dared not comprehend, yet they felt distant, a lingering reminder of horrors yet alive in their silence. I ran a trembling hand along the wall, the peeling paint a grotesque pattern of faces yet to emerge, their features forever obscured but their presence felt in the gnawing tension that coated the air. "What is this place?" I whispered, though part of me feared the answer could manifest in the very fabric of the walls. The floor creaked under my weight, and each move echoed as if reverberating into a forgotten chasm. There was something sinister lurking beyond the thin veil of silence, an unsettling calm that veiled the unseen. It was then I heard her child's laughter echoing from somewhere deep within the recesses of the house, high-pitched and haunting, bouncing off the walls like a tragic memory playing on an endless loop. I staggered through the doorway, hesitant, wondering if I was being led into a far darker place, one where laughter danced with grief. "Hello?" I called, my voice tremulous yet daring, seeking something, some semblance of life amid this lingering horror. "Come play with us," the child's voice replied, both effervescent and chilling, a coy invitation wrapped in a thatch of malice. The laughter transformed, morphing into a symphony of whispers that tugged at the fringes of my sanity. I edged further down the corridor, following the echoes painted with hollowness in the air, each step resonating with unseen eyes watching from shadows that seemed to throb in rhythm with my racing heart. The darkness whispered to me, slithering in thoughts I feared to articulate, wrapping me in a shroud of anxiety and dread. As I approached what felt like the heart of the house, a decrepit room steeped in lingering sorrows, I caught sight of the door slightly ajar, an ancient wooden barrier that seemed to hum with anticipation. Tentatively, I reached for the handle, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. The instant I turned it, a chill shot through me, a vibrant warning barely veiling what lay within. The door creaked open and shadows danced across the walls, caught in the bittersweet glow of a flickering candle that emerged from within, a single, solitary light flickering defiantly amidst the gloom. The flames twisted, shapes spinning around the base, teasing form and substance with their capricious flickers. "Join us!" a chorus of voices pleaded from the shadows, echoing, harmonizing with the breath of the candle. Each whisper beckoned like fingers reaching into my heart, stoking fears and hopes alike. I felt them wrap around me, layered in weariness and an unending pull toward something beyond comprehension. Then dread set in as I noticed the shadows converged around a circle drawn on the wooden floor, an intricate design swirling in chaos. Bones littered the periphery, a macabre arrangement of toys burned beyond recognition, trapped within this arcane ritual that felt all too familiar. Your brother chose you, too, one of the voices cooed, sing-song and knowingly. He lingers, waiting just beyond the flickering intensified, and in that moment, a figure emerged from the darkness surrounding the circle, a young boy, his eyes vacant but filled with longing, my brother's likeness muted into something distorted and ghastly. He stood, arms outstretched, shadows rippling against his pale figure, a marionette ensnared in the fevered dream of this cruel game. No! I cried, stepping back, heart racing as hope melded with despair. What did you do to him? The candlelight flickered violently, revealing more of the encircling figures. Children gathered, their faces twisted with glee and sadness, locked within a truth too terrible to bear. They reached for me with bony fingers and hollow eyes, their laughter morphing into desperate pleas as they shifted around the floor, inching closer to the circle, drawing me towards them. Only those who play can return, they whispered in unison, beckoning with both innocence and terror, edging me toward the threshold of that ominous circle. No! I gasped, dread pulsing in time with the rhythm of my condemnation. The shadows thickened, slithering around my legs, eager to pull me in, while my brother's vacant stare bore through me the anguish of an eternal cycle reflected in his hollow gaze. That I felt the candle flicker one last time, casting an eerie silhouette on the wall, revealing a mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. And then, without warning, the light extinguished, plunging me into a vast, consuming dark. The laughter erupted into a cacophony, and I realized I was no longer merely a spectator. I had become part of their game. Desperation surged through me. I could not succumb. I turned and ran, feeling the shadows claw at my back as I burst through the doorway, racing down the corridor where the whispers morphed into guttural roars, echoing sinister promises of what awaited if I failed. Just as I reached for the door leading outside, icy hands gripped my shoulders, halting my flight. It was then I felt their breath upon my neck, the whispers lining the back of my mind. You don't know what you're asking for. In that chilling moment, the walls shuddered, the house itself vibrating with terrible laughter as a new darkness bled from the corners of the room, a deeper, more malicious shadow beckoning from the depths of fate. And just as I found the courage to turn, to face whatever monster lurked behind me, the whole house moaned, a palpable hunger that bathed me in a thick suffocating darkness, closing in with an echoing promise of despair. I staggered back, eyes wide in terror, the once familiar space now warped by despair. The shadows thickened, swallowing the feeble light creeping through the cracks in the walls. Panic surged through my veins as I fought against the grips of the unseen hands, their icy touch sending a jolt of dread deeper into my core. Leave me alone! I shrieked, though my voice sounded hollow, consumed by the encroaching darkness. Was this their game? To toy with me until I was nothing more than a reflection of the fear I had unwittingly embraced? But the laughter that echoed around me only grew in intensity, a haunting serenade that teased the very essence of loneliness. Gary! My heart raced with the thought of my brother trapped within this nightmare, a puppet dangling at the mercy of those haunting shadows. With a sudden surge of desperation, I twisted in their grip, determined to break free. As I flailed, I felt the cold fingers retreat, but not before they grazed my skin, leaving a burning sensation that pulsed in sync with the chaos brewing around me. I darted toward the doorway again, hoping against hope that I could make it outside and reclaim whatever sliver of sanity remained. With each step, 1,000 whispers surged, rising up like a tide, drowning my thoughts with distorted cries of familiar grief. But the door stood resolute, locked tight, as if the house itself had conspired to trap me within its suffocating embrace. Gripping the handle with frantic urgency, I jostled it again and again, the metallic clang echoing in the stillness. Let me out! Let me out! And then, I felt it, the buzzing undercurrent of something sinister shifting just beyond the threshold. It felt like a heartbeat, a terrible rhythm that thrummed through the dim, warped air, drowning all thoughts but one: escape. The laughter roared, a virulent crescendo that merged with my panic, forcing bile up my throat. They were gaining ground, the spirits trapped alongside the children, their eyes glinting with malevolent delight as they surrounded me. They were playing their game, pulling me into a performance of abject terror, and something held tightly to the strings of this puppetry, an entity sleeping within the depths of the house, waiting for me to surrender to the darkness that I whirled around to face the circling shadows. There was no way I would give up. I won play. I shouted defiantly, forcing words through clenched teeth. You will not take me. You will not take him. But as I declared my resolve, a gust of wind swept through the corridor, chilling me down to my bones. Guttural growls coalesced from the shadows, morphing the childlike laughter into something infinitely darker. The house quaked, tying my dread back into a knot of inevitability. A force more potent than my defiance enveloped me. The walls pulsed, breathing in and out, inhaling the remnants of flickering hope. Then, they began to shift, the once candid wallpaper peeling away to reveal grotesque faces twisted in anguish, their mouths stitched shut, a helpless chorus of figures lamenting their shared plight. With renewed desperation, I slammed into the door one final time, throwing my shoulder against the wood with all the force I could muster. It didn't budge, and the rattling laughter grew heavier, closer, as if feeding off my despair. Come play with us, they sang, their voices threading through the air like a haunting melody laced with venomous intent. My heart raced as I felt the ground beneath me vibrating, a tangible pulsation reverberating through the soles of my feet. Then, behind me, a forward lurch. The whispers stopped abruptly, a pin-drop silence that filled the space with an unsettling angst. A child's voice spoke softly into the void. You said we could be together again. I whipped around, my own reflection broken by a swirl of darkness overtaking the candle's flicker, revealing my brother within the throng of distorted faces, his form obscured but unmistakably there, stretching toward me, yearning for connection. Help me, please. Gary. I screamed, vibrant panic tearing through me. I reached out, stretching my fingers toward his outstretched hand, but the shadows surged forward, dense and relentless, coiling around his form, pulling him deeper into the circle drawn upon the floor. Only those who play can return, they echoed, laughter harmonizing with Gary's fading cries as they twisted him further into the darkness. Something sharp stung against my throat, fear solidified, the shadows erupted once more, enveloping me. And as I expanded into that cacophony of hollow joy and despair, a fierce hand gripped my heart, and the realization crashed over me: the door beside me was slowly opening. A sliver of light painted itself against the walls behind the lingering chaos, refracting hope that beckoned me from the other side. But it was not the ultimate salvation I'd imagined. Behind that gleaming portal, I heard a voice all too familiar whispering in tenderness, "It's time to play." And just before I could move toward that light, the shadows surged, claiming me in a frigid embrace that stole the breath from my lungs. The shadows constricted around me, viscous and suffocating, as they pulled me from the threshold of light. My brother's cries reverberated through the darkness, a chilling echo that pierced my very soul. I was drowning in a sea of despair, forced into the center of their twisted game. The air thickened with an acrid stench, burnt hope and despair lingering like a grim memento mori. Let him go. I screamed, writhing against the relentless grip, sparks of rage igniting my heart. But with each futile struggle, the shadows coiled tighter, and the laughter morphed into something that felt like a visceral mockery of my desperation. Then, an unmistakable shift: the ground beneath me trembled as if the house itself were awakening from a long slumber, or perhaps entering a deeper state of malevolence. The walls pulsated with rhythm, a heartbeat synchronized with my own growing panic. The grotesque faces emerging from the wallpaper contorted further, stretching and twisting as they whispered more than just sorrow. Now they were uttering secrets that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Play nice, the shadows hissed, voices entwined into a single malicious entity that dripped with glee. He needs you in the game or you will never escape. Suddenly, the room spiraled, the light flickering and warping until it became impossible to discern where it ended and the dark began. I was being swept up into a vortex of despair, an unwilling participant in a twisted carnival ride where every flickering smile turned to a grimace of anguish. Play with us. A new voice joined the chorus, high-pitched and gleeful, an echoing laughter that sliced through the fog of my senses. I turned, heart racing, to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a girl with disheveled hair and hollow eyes, her lips stretched into a smile that was all wrong. "Join us, and we can all be free," she wheedled, her head tilting unnaturally as if examining me under a microscope, taking me apart layer by layer. A chill ran down my spine. The shadows behind her writhed and whispered dark secrets, flickering like candlelight just out of reach, adding layers of dread with their promises. Free? They're lying, I gasped, wishing to retch from the taste of fear pooling in my mouth. Whatever this is, it's a lie. Not a lie. A game. She chirped back, stepping closer, her eyes swirling with colors too vibrant for the darkness. Just one more player. At that, the shadows surged again, closing in like a tide about to swallow me whole. As she reached for me, I felt the freezing touch of the ether pressing in. The child Frank, Gary's closest friend, who had disappeared years ago but his absence was now materialized in her haunting gaze. "They want you to take my place," she sang softly, her sing-song tone burrowing deeper into my mind like the blunted edge of an axe. Images flooded my memory, flashes of Gary and Frank, laughter echoing beneath trees that now felt far away, replaced by darkness. "You don't know what it means to play," she continued, eyes catching the weak, flickering light. "You must face your fears to save him." Fractals of darkness spiraled around me, warping the air, and suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a figure I could almost recognize, a twisted reflection of my brother standing behind the girl, his face split by an unnatural grin. Cold terror seeped into my bones. "Only when you surrender," echoed the malevolence. "Then you can all play together." I felt myself slipping, tethered to the ground only by frantic thoughts of my brother. I had to fight back. I would not let these shadows dictate my fate. But even as resolve surged within me, a scene began to unfold before my eyes. The night of the last game, shadows binding my brother and me as we played hide-and-seek in the backyard. A game that now felt cursed, unspooling horror with every flickering memory. In a split-second decision, I lunged forward, grabbing the girl's wrist. "I refuse to be part of this nightmare," I shouted, summoning every ounce of will. The shadows recoiled, a horrid sweeping motion that pulled me into a tempest of whispers. Voices overlapping and growing deafening. "No one escapes. You cannot leave," they chanted, and then the girl twisted, her face contorting in agony, eyes narrowing into voids that consumed the surrounding light. Then, a loud crack echoed through the air, and the floor beneath me fell away. I plummeted through inky blackness, the laughter fading into an echo. Just as I braced for impact, a hand hot and familiar gripped mine. "Help me." Gary's voice quivered as he pulled, dragging me into the unknown. But old shadows lingered, clawing at our ankles. They wouldn't let go that easily, and as we were yanked further down the abyss together, I realized with horror that this descent was only the beginning. As the crushing darkness enveloped us, the sensation of falling morphed into a disorienting swirl, tossing us through a labyrinth of shadow and sound. I fought to maintain my grip on Gary's hand, his warmth a fleeting reminder of safety in this endless void. "What is happening?" I shouted, my voice swallowed whole by the ghastly silence. "Don't let go," he screamed back, the panic threading through his words, laced with a desperation that sent icy tendrils through my heart. Yet, even as I held on, the pulling sensation intensified, an unseen force dragging me apart from him, as if the shadows liked playing with their prey in cruel, calculated increments. Suddenly, we found ourselves standing not on solid ground, but precariously balanced atop an expanse of shadowy water reflecting nothing but despair. The surface rippled with distorted reflections of murky, gasping faces twisting in eternal anguish, drawing closer to our feet. My stomach turned, emotions coiling tightly as the echoes of their silent screams amplified in my mind. That I looked at Gary, his eyes wide and glistening with fear. "We have to find a way out," I said, shifting my gaze to the horizon, where the landscape morphed into indistinct shapes, hinting at a horizon that mocked our every instinct. The shadows continued to weave around us like a living tapestry, whispering secrets that pressed against my skull. "But they won't let us leave," he said, trembling as he cast a desperate glance over his shoulder. I turned too, bracing myself for a look at whatever lurked behind us. The void swirled ominously, and from its depths, that piercing child's laughter unmatched, haunting echoed again. My heart raced with mounting terror. Play with us, come back to the game. A chorus of voices, impossibly young, resonated through the shadows, growing louder and more intoxicating as the shadows writhed like hungry serpents, inching closer along the mirrored surface. We can't let them take us. I gripped Gary's hand harder, but already I felt the shadows lapping at my skin, wrapping around me in bands of cold despair. Memories of Frank, the faces from our childhood, flashed relentlessly in front of me, a carousel of fading laughter and ripped friendships, their joy now a grotesque reminder of our current fate. The laughter twisted into a shriek, cutting through the air just as the water began to bubble angrily beneath us. No more games, whispered an unnaturally familiar voice, as a figure began to manifest just below the surface, its features shifting rapidly like a mirage refusing to settle into one form. I couldn't bear to look away, entranced and horrified as it beckoned. Stay with us, the figure purred, morphing into what was unmistakably Frank. His face twisted with mockery and pain, lips curling in a smile that was nowhere near genuine. We've been waiting for you. It's time to play again, Gary, don't listen. I screamed, terror gnashing at my sanity. But Gary's eyes, once aflame with defiance, dimmed as he began to release my grip, almost drawn into the abyss of twisted memories and promises. Reluctantly, from my peripheral vision, I sensed movement beyond the darkness, a dim light flickering like dying embers, revealing a single path made of old wooden floors, cracked and splintered with age. The air grew heavier, laden with tension and despair, forming a sensation that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Run! I yelled, yanking Gary in the direction of the flickering light, the only hope against the encroaching shadows. He moved slowly, eyes locked on Frank's contorted grin, an agonizing tug-of-war between light and darkness, but the whispers grew to a deafening chorus, calling our names, promising reunion and untold freedom. The entire structure of the void began shuddering, as if the very fabric of reality warped around our frantic escape. Just when I thought we were breaking free, a pair of skeletal hands burst through the water, dragging my brother back. Gary! I screamed, but the shadows howled in laughter. Let him go. The darkness dove into a frenzy, everything pulsating around us. I fought through the encroaching despair, reaching for Gary with every ounce of strength, but caught between two worlds, the wish for connection and the pull of despair. He faltered. No! I shouted, my voice breaking as I felt the pull of the shadows wrapping around my base instincts, drawing me to give in. But just as I thought he would succumb, he screamed, don't fight it. I can't. And then, as if in answer, the sky above us exploded in chaotic light, sudden and blinding, tearing a rift through the oppressive darkness, revealing a hidden passage. With all the strength I could muster, I lunged for him one last time, feeling the weight of everything on my shoulders. The moment our fingers touched, the darkness quaked in a cataclysmic roar. In that instant, I was jerked forward, thrust into the glimmering breach. But as we were yanked into the light, a silhouette whispered, dripping with malice, you can't escape the game, all will play, sooner or later. And then, just as the light closed in around us, I felt Gary slipping from my grasp, his terrified face turning toward me, his eyes wide with panic. The darkness retreated, but not before I heard the echo of those two words, a sinister promise hanging in the air, a reminder that this was far from over. Until next time. I woke up gasping, disoriented and alone in the attic. The oppressive darkness had receded, leaving a flickering light from a battered lamp that buzzed like a trapped fly. My heart thundered in my chest, every breath thick with disbelief. Had it all been a nightmare? I scrambled to my feet, squeezing my eyes shut, desperate to shake free of the remnants of fear still clinging to me like a shroud, but as I steadied myself, reality shifted. I glanced around the cramped space, my surroundings eerily unchanged. Old trunks lay stacked in the corners, dusty and forlorn, while the darkened corners of the room seemed deeper, as though shadows had folded upon themselves, harboring sinister memories. The familiar scent of rotting wood filled the air, pulling at my gut like a warning bell, and then I heard it again, a soft murmur. Help me please, I froze, heart lodged in my throat. It was so familiar, my brother's voice. Gary. Panic gripped me, forcing me to move before logic could overtake my instincts. I bolted toward the attic door, but it swung shut before I could reach it, as if the house had conspired to seal me within its embrace. "Gary!" I yelled, my voice breaking, echoing hopelessly against the walls. "Where are you?" The sheer terror etched itself deeper in my heart, drowning out the remnants of hope. And then I saw it, a face peering through the small attic window, staring back at me with chilling familiarity. It was him, yet not him, a grotesque mockery of what had been. "Come play with me," he sang, lips curling into a rictus smile that gleamed with menace, eyes swirling with discontent. "Gary, stop. Please, where are you?" I pleaded, but I saw through the veil of innocence he wore like a mask. Laughter erupted from somewhere deep within the house, echoed by those other haunting voices. They were celebrating my descent into madness. That he tilted his head, laughter turning cruel, eyes narrowing. "You opened the door, didn't you? You wanted to find me." A horrifying realization washed over me. This was not my brother, it was the darkness wearing his shape. "You're nothing but a lie," I shrieked, fury igniting within me, battling against despair. "I won't fall for your games." Suddenly, a chorus of childlike giggles flared to life around me, weaving through the darkness, erupting into an intoxicating spell of laughter that cut deep into my core. The room began to twist, shadows expanding and contracting, pulsating like a living entity. "The game has only just begun," the creature mimicked, swinging around like a shadowy marionette. I felt a familiar, cold touch creep at the edges of my consciousness, a fear that had woven itself into the fabric of my being. Desperate for an escape, I lunged for the attic door, my heart racing, every ounce of willpower pouring into my limbs. I screamed, "Stop! You can't keep me here." But beneath the laughter, I heard the old, familiar, brittle voice of the house, sweet yet tainted, "You belong to us now. You are part of the family." In that moment, the air thickened with near absolute dread. I felt the pulse of 1,000 trapped souls surrounding me, longing to escape but ensnared in this terrible cycle, a cycle I had unwittingly joined. I turned back, desperation pooling in my chest as the echoing laughter echoed sinisterly, promising reunion, offering freedom that twisted into chains. "No," I murmured, the weight of despair pinching close. But as I confronted the false visage of my brother, a flicker of rebellion ignited within me. I would face the truth: my family, my childhood, my losses, they had never been a game. They were the catalyst igniting this nightmare. What had been once a thread in the fabric of my existence was now a blade, slicing through the shadows, resonating with the souls who had vanished along with their dreams. The walls responded, they pulsed with energy, and an apparition emerged, a spectral figure adorned in ribbons of darkness. "You have chosen," it hissed, the voice reverberating painfully, curling against the walls, crumbling to ash.in "my last desperate act," I shouted, "I choose to leave." My heart raced with fury and resolve, and as those words escaped my lips, a light exploded from within, pushing against the encroaching shadows. But then came a cacophony, a choir of voices shrieking, merging and diverging, overwhelming, begging me to stay. "You cannot leave without playing," they wailed, making the walls quake as the very foundation of every moment I had ever cherished crumbled beneath me. "Family forever." The shadows echoed, surrendering to the depths of despair, joining into an unholy fabric woven by instinct, fear, and lost hope. A light too bright to ignore clawed its way through the atmosphere, and I could not hold on any longer. The boundaries of my sanity cracked as laughter morphed into sobbing, the masks of familiar faces fading as I screamed against the tide. "You'll always be here," Gary's voice repeated, dripping with poison, clawing at my heartstrings. And just like that, the brightness swallowed me whole. "Goodbye," echoed, fronted by the dark, and suddenly, everything went cold. The thoughts of escape twisted cruelly, just as I closed my eyes tight, and then, as if waking from a fever dream, it all snapped into place. I thrust my eyes open only to find myself in where I stood, a stark realization rooted inside me. The attic door swung open, but Gary's laughter remained, echoing endlessly, and I realized, before I turned to leave, that the true horror wasn't ever about escaping. And somehow, somewhere, deep within the house, the echoes of countless souls were entwined with mine. Because the game had only just begun, so many had already lost. But now, it was my turn to play, forever.